throwaway because my wife knows my main. My mother-in-law stalks my comments, and I do not have the stamina to explain this to the PDA. Ages for context. Me, 36M. Wife, Harper, 33F. Daughter, Lena, 6F. Medium Midwest suburb where the water tower looks like a marshmallow, and there are 3 different grocery stores where you can buy the same rotisserie chicken. A $1.50 toll I didn't take ended my marriage. That's the hook, and it's also the truth. The charge hit my email at 1:18 a.m. On a Thursday. A friendly little notification from RiverPass reminding me that you zipped through like a champion. I was not zipping through anything at 1:18 a.m. I was asleep in a bed with crayon on the headboard because my kid is convinced every surface is a canvas. Harper was at a late spin class with friends, which is a sentence that sounds like cardio and camaraderie if you don't look too closely. The bridge that toll belongs to is 28 minutes north of our house and leads to 2 things. An outlet mall that died in 2013 and a strip of motels that look like they rent rooms to people on first-name basis with regret. My brain did the gymnastics we all do when we want to stay married. Maybe Harper's friend lives over there. Maybe someone borrowed her car. Maybe RiverPass glitched. Maybe. I tried to roll over and go back to sleep, and my heart replied with a drum solo. I got up, padded to the kitchen where the nightlight makes the cabinets look like a stage, and opened the laptop. The RiverPass site lets you see your trip history if you click the cheerful button that says, "Where you've been," as if it's a scrapbook. There were 12 crossings in the last 6 weeks. All late at night. All to the north. I stared long enough that the screen timed out and the little login box reflected my stupid, hopeful face. I didn't storm the house or practice speeches in the mirror. I made pancakes at 2 a.m. because I have discovered that cooking is the only math I can do while the rest of my life is subtraction. While I whisked, the porch camera pinged. I checked for raccoons. Instead, I watched Harper slip in the back door holding her shoes. She looked tired and beautiful and like she knew where she had been. In the morning, she put on the blue blazer that means meeting with someone who has a corner office, and kissed the top of my head. She smelled like eucalyptus and a hotel hallway. Late class, I said, which was my coward's way of saying we both own the same calendar and it is lying to us. She nodded and poured coffee like she hadn't read my mind. I am not a detective. I am a dad who is decent at Excel. That week, I pulled bank statements for the first time since we set up autopay for everything that matters. I found a $72 charge at a diner by the river I didn't know existed. I found a $19.50 daily pass for a gym that is not the gym where Harper's membership lives. I found a lift from Riverside Inn to the Fox and Finch tap room, which I Googled and learned has a trivia night hosted by a man named Cal, who looks exactly like a man named Cal. Before this starts sounding like I'm one corkboard away from connecting red strings, our insurance helped a lot. We switched to a safe driver discount program last year. The kind that plugs a dongle into the car and tattles if you brake too hard. It also shows trip history, which I learned because I'm the kind of person who reads the fine print when I'm too anxious to sleep. On 3 separate nights, Harper's car did the same loop. Our house bridge motel strip 15-minute idle, the same diner bridge home. I didn't confront, not then. Reddit loves a cinematic confront. Life loves paperwork. I called a doctor, tests, because I love myself and my kid more than my pride. A therapist, Ms. Collier, Cardigan, Steel Spines, and a lawyer, Geeta Patel, voice like a good podcast. Ms. Patel told me the rules of the road. Equitable distribution, best interests of the child, don't threaten, don't post on Facebook, document everything, and do not, under any circumstances, go talk to the other person because that's a knife that only cuts you. I lasted 6 more days. On the 7th, a Tuesday that felt like a prank, I got another RiverPass ping at 10:52 p.m. Lena was asleep with her braid stuck to her cheek. I messaged my friend Jules, 35M, the kind of man who owns a shop vac and an emotional vocabulary. He texted back a single sentence. Drive if you must, but park far and breathe. So I did. I parked across from the Riverside Inn, a 2-story building that would be charming in a different story. The lobby lamp made the kind of yellow that wants to be called warm. At 11:37 p.m. Harper walked out with a man. He was not a caricature. He was mid-30s, clean sneakers, a jacket that said he reads reviews before buying. He kept a respectful distance like he'd been told how affairs look when photographed. He said something that made her tilt her head and smile in a way that put me back on our honeymoon for exactly 1 second. He touched her elbow. They did not kiss. She got in her car and drove south. He went west on foot toward the taproom. I sat there like a museum guard watching a painting that refuses to explain itself. Then I went home and loaded the dishwasher because it felt like a thing a person in a stable universe might do. The next morning I asked Harper to meet me at a breakfast place with menu items like farmer's skillet and coffee that tastes like a sincere attempt. I didn't order food. I wrapped my hands around the mug like it was evidence. I got a toll alert, I said. She didn't lie right away. She looked at the window and then at me and said, I went for a drive. Across the bridge, I said. Sometimes it helps me think, she said. And sometimes you stop at the Riverside Inn, I said, and watched the word land between us like a wet umbrella. Her face did the math. It isn't, she started and stopped. His name is Mark, she said. We met at trivia. Felt harmless. I felt good for the first time in a while. And then it wasn't harmless. Are you in love with him? I asked, polite like I was asking a waiter to refill water. I don't know, she said. No, maybe. I like the way I feel around him. Like I'm a version of myself that isn't just lunches and deadlines. Did you sleep with him? I asked. Came out like I was reading off a form. Yes, she said. One word, small as a seed and just as capable of growing trees. I didn't flip the table. I didn't lecture. I said the sentence my therapist put in my mouth. If you want to try to repair this, I need a written timeline, full transparency on devices and locations, individual therapy for you and me, a no-contact message we draft together and send, and a separation plan if any of that breaks. Harper cried in a way that made me want to wipe her face like I always have. I didn't. I don't want to break our family, she said. I hate myself. I hate that I did this. I hate that I liked it. We went home and told Lena we were having a movie night because grown-ups needed to talk after she went to bed. We wrote the no-contact text together. It used the words wrong, husband, family, and do not contact me again. She hit send. I watched her block his number. We synced calendars. She gave me codes and passwords. She wrote a timeline that included diners and rooms and the playlist she listens to when she drives across the bridge. I read it and felt the kind of nausea you get in a parking garage with low ceilings. Harper lasted 19 days. On day 20, an Uber receipt hit our joint email at 12:07 a.m. Riverside Inn to Riverside Donuts, which somehow made it worse. She walked in at 12:44 smelling like sugar and rain. I had printed the receipt and put it on the counter under the magnetic Idaho I don't remember buying. We didn't do a screaming fight. We did something worse. We were quiet. I met him to say goodbye, she said. People who are done don't need to say goodbye in rooms with ice machines. I said. I'm not going to be the villain to save you from being the villain. We enacted the plan. Ms. Patel drew up a temporary separation. Alternate days. Bedtimes together when we could manage politeness. Money in a spreadsheet that made me sweat. We told Lena together in the living room with the therapist's script in our hands. You didn't cause this, I said. You can't fix it. You are loved the size of outer space in both houses. She asked if both houses could have dinosaur chicken nuggets. We said yes so fast it felt like repentance. The guest room in our house became my room. I learned its sounds. The heat kicks on at 2 a.m. with a hoof. The neighbor's motion light makes a rectangle that climbs the wall when a cat wanders past. I put my ring in a bowl on the dresser and then, 2 nights later, put it back on because my finger felt like a phantom limb was accusing me of something. Harper started therapy. So did I. We did a full disclosure session that I recommend to no one and everyone. She read her timeline out loud to a stranger with a clipboard while I stared at the rug and memorized its pattern. I learned that affairs are mostly logistics with occasional romance. I learned the exact date when something I thought was solid changed states without telling me. I also learned that I was not the villain of this story, which is harder to accept than you think when you've been auditioning for the role of guy who missed the signs. I met Mark once. Not on purpose. Our town has one decent farmer's market and a coffee stall with lines that suggest caffeine is a religion. He was behind me with a bag of peaches like a prop. Our eyes did the calculation. He said, "I'm sorry." I said, "I'm raising a kid." He looked like a person who jogs and believes hard in podcasts about optimization. I stepped out of line and bought donuts because I needed the kind of sugar that comes in a bag. What Reddit likes to hear is that I found strength in the gym and adopted a rescue dog and started a side hustle selling reclaimed barnwood. What actually happened is I got very good at Tuesday. I learned the art of the school drop-off wave. I learned which brand of mac and cheese Lena will eat without negotiating. I learned that if you fold laundry while watching baseball, time behaves. I learned that a group of men in the back room of a church can save your life by nodding at the right moments. My parents showed up with casserole wisdom and exactly the wrong advice delivered with exactly the right love. Jules installed a new garbage disposal because he said a man needs at least one appliance that does what you ask. Ms. Patel translated feelings into paragraphs and signatures and reminded me that fair is what everyone in the room can live with, not what TV teaches you in the third act. We made it through birthdays and a school play where 6 pirates yelled the same line and it was perfect. We learned to do holidays like a relay race, parade and cinnamon rolls with me, turkey and loud cousins with Harper. We exchanged Lena in the library lobby because libraries are like churches for people who worship quiet. I dated reluctantly. There was a physical therapist named Maya, different Maya. Every town has 3. She laughed like she'd practiced being kind to strangers. We went on 4 dates and then she told me she wanted a person, not a project. I agreed and we parted respectfully with shared custody of a favorite taco truck recommendation. Harper started seeing someone serious months later. She told me first so I wouldn't hear it from a car seat. He's a school counselor who can juggle, which Lena finds more impressive than a PhD. I met him on a porch under string lights because every American porch now comes with string lights. He shook my hand like he knew what a boundary was. I did not hate him. It felt like another toll paid on a road I didn't ask to drive. I won't lie and say there aren't nights where the silence feels like a dare. I have a list for those nights. Wash the sheets, run the dishwasher, watch a game on low volume, text Jules a picture of something I cooked badly, reread the note Miss Collier had me write. You get to be proud of the way you act even when you didn't choose the situation. I check on Lena and lay a hand on her back and thank a God I half believe in that she breathes like sleep is simple. On the anniversary of the $1.50 toll, Riverpass sent me a promotional email about how fast their lanes are now. I laughed alone in my kitchen and then made waffles because it was Tuesday and because traditions are what you build when the old ones stop fitting. If you're reading this because you're in the part where your stomach is a trampoline and your brain is a courtroom, here's the only useful thing I learned. Your nervous system tells the truth even when everyone else doesn't. Believe the ping. Call the doctor. Call the therapist. Call the lawyer who speaks in paragraphs. Don't light yourself on fire to keep a marriage warm. Don't make your kid carry a bag you packed. Be boring about your healing. It's the only kind that lasts. Harper and I are not friends. We are colleagues on the project called Lena. We send each other photos from opposite bleachers. We don't flirt with nostalgia. We exchange exact times at exact places and sometimes laugh. Not because we're okay, but because sometimes things are funny anyway. The bridge still stands. The toll still costs $1.50. Sometimes, late at night, I imagine driving north just to see if the diner still serves the pie she wrote about in that timeline. I don't. I drive to the 24-hour grocery, buy milk and apples, come home to a house that sounds like mine, and set the coffee maker for morning. The drumbeat in my chest has learned a new rhythm. It is not triumphant. It is steady. And that is enough. The week after our breakfast détente, I learned that grief is not just sadness. It's admin. I spent an entire lunch break on hold with Riverpass listening to a pan flute try to sell me serenity, while a recorded voice thanked me for my patience like it was a currency you can put on a card. I asked for exportable logs. The woman on the phone said that wasn't a feature and sounded genuinely apologetic, as if corporate policy were a flat tire she could change if I waited long enough. I took screenshots instead and saved them in a folder named with a date and a word I didn't enjoy typing. At night, when the house went quiet enough to hear the fridge cycle, I noticed how many of our habits had been group projects. There are 1,000 tiny agreements you don't clock until you're the only one in the room executing them. Harper, it turns out, was the one who always cracked the ice tray at an angle that made perfect cubes. I started breaking them into abstract sculpture. She was the one who added the dryer sheets at exactly the right moment so that the clothes smelled like intention rather than chemicals. I read blogs about dryer sheet timing like I was cramming for an exam. Lena adapted the way kids do, with questions asked at the worst possible times and the sincerity of a scientist. When people stop being married, do their birthdays move? She asked on the way to school. Do we still get the same mail? Is there a rule for who gets the blue blanket? Every answer felt like choosing a door on a game show where the prize is just another door. I repeated the script the therapist gave us. You didn't cause this, you can't fix it, you're loved in both houses. So many times I started hearing it in my sleep. My mother-in-law discovered everything at the speed of gossip. She called to say she was disappointed in the institution of marriage, like marriage had personally let her down by skipping leg day. I breathed into the phone and said, I understand you're upset. I'm keeping things civil for Lena. She cried in a way that made me feel like the villain in a story where everyone else forgot Act 1. Later, she texted me a photo of a casserole and asked if I wanted her recipe. I said yes because I have learned that sometimes the only right answer is carbs. Jules showed up with labels and bins and a pep talk, and we turned the guest room into something that looked like a place a person lives on purpose. Don't make it a bunker, he said, which was a smarter sentence than most I'd heard in months. We put a lamp by the bed that turns on if you clap. A ridiculous item that made Lena laugh so loud I decided it had permanent residency. One Thursday, I picked Lena up from school, and she showed me a drawing of our family where the four of us were stick figures in front of a house with 2 doors. Why 2 doors? I asked, my voice stepping carefully across a creak of panic. Because sometimes you go in one door and sometimes the other, she said, as if geometry were the answer all along. I put the picture on the fridge with the Idaho magnet and felt something locate itself in my chest. The first mediation session for the separation had the vibe of a group project in a class where everyone had a different syllabus. Ms. Patel sat beside me with a yellow legal pad and the penmanship of a person who respects curves. Harper's attorney wore a scarf that said she had opinions about French cinema. The mediator had the softest voice I've ever heard on a person who's not trying to sell me sleep gummies. We spoke in phrases like holiday rotation and right of first refusal and curbside handoff. At one point we spent 15 minutes discussing a single line about screen time, and somehow that made me cry later in the car because it meant we were building a fence for a garden that hadn't died. The no-contact period had its own weather system. The first week, Harper was stormy and then still. I watched her walk around the kitchen like a person who has rearranged the furniture and forgotten in the dark. She took to writing thoughts on sticky notes and then sticking them in a notebook, an act of order that fooled exactly nobody and still helped. I made dinner the way a person who grew up in the 90s does. Pasta plus optimism. On nights Lena requested pancakes, I made faces on them with fruit, and on nights she requested grown-up food. I roasted broccoli and pretended not to enjoy it. I told my boss as much as he needed to know. I'm rebalancing, I said, which sounded like a yoga pose. I'll be here. I'll also be there. I won't drop balls that break. He nodded like he'd been waiting for a reason to be human and said, take the afternoons you need. We're not curing cancer. We're moving spreadsheets. I took the afternoons I needed and learned that the world keeps spinning when you choose your kid over a meeting about a meeting. The first time the river pass pinged after we separated, I was at the grocery store buying green grapes because Lena's allegiance to grape color changes without notice. The ping made my hands go cold around a bag of lemons. I checked the map and saw the dot headed north. I put the lemons back because I didn't trust myself with anything you can throw. I paid for the grapes and a candy bar and ate the candy bar in the car with the windows up like a person hiding from a storm in a convertible. The dot eventually came back south. I didn't text Harper. I told Ms. Collier, who said, notice that you survived the minute after the minute. Put a check mark on that day. I did. It looked small and felt not small. The disclosure session came next. If there is a patron saint of people who sit on couches while their lives are read back to them in the past tense, she was in the room that day. Harper's voice shook, then steadied. I learned the starting pistol, trivia at the taproom, a question about 90s bands, a joke about how neither of them could name all the Spice Girls in order, a direct message that turned into an inside joke that turned into a plan. I learned the exact length of a silence that grew teeth. I learned that the diner by the river serves cherry pie that made her cry, because humans are ridiculous in consistent ways. The therapists asked us both to say what we were sorry for. She said she was sorry for being selfish and for making me carry a secret I didn't consent to. I said I was sorry for the loneliness that settled into our house like dust and for not shaking it off sooner. Neither apology fixed anything. Both duct taped something long enough to get us to the parking lot. We didn't go home together after that. We went to separate parking lots in the same weather. I drove to the river and sat with my windows down while midges performed an interpretive dance I didn't understand. Harper texted me a photo of Lena asleep on the couch because she knows that if you put a photo of a sleeping child in front of a father, he will drop whatever he's holding, including resentment, at least for a minute. I said thank you and we didn't talk about the session, because sometimes silence is the only tool that doesn't make the mess bigger. I started running. It's a boring sentence, and it's the truest one I can type about the months that followed. Running gave me a container to pour the noise into. I am not fast. I am a human metronome in clearance shoes. I made a route that avoided the bridge because I'm not interested in recreational triggers. My favorite stretch is a quiet road where a horse lives behind a fence and pretends not to notice me. I wave anyway like a man who needs to be polite to a horse. Saturdays became our reset. We do pancakes and cartoons in the kind of sequence that would make a lifestyle influencer cry from jealousy. Sometimes Harper would stay for breakfast even on my days because the script says we can be in the same room when the kid is awake, and because Lena believes in family breakfasts like a religion. It was awkward until it wasn't. Harper would make the coffee too strong, and I would pretend not to notice, and Lena would tell us how kindergarten is arming her with sight words like blue and because, the latter of which she used constantly, incorrectly, and beautifully. My father came over to fix my sink because that is how he loves. He did not talk about Harper. He did not mention the bridge. He asked where I keep the Teflon tape and then brought his own Teflon tape as if mine might offend him. When he finished, we stood at the counter and ate peanut butter crackers in silence like we were hiding from a tornado in the pantry of our feelings. He slapped my shoulder softly and said, "Proud of you," and left before I could make a joke that would spoil it. Lena's first tooth came out on a Tuesday at 7:14 p.m. while she was eating an apple and pretending to be a horse, which is a choice she makes a lot lately. She looked startled and then thrilled, and then worried that the tooth fairy would not know which house to visit. We wrote a note and copied it, one for each house, and both fairies overtipped because inflation. The custody schedule eventually became muscle memory. We learned to do the handoff at the library just as the after-school rush ended, when the entryway smelled like crayons and ambition. The librarians learned our names and our rhythm and started leaving out a coloring sheet for Lena with 2 sets of crayons. On the days when the rain turned the parking lot into a mirror, we walked slowly and let the water do whatever it wanted to do. I had a bad day in early spring where everything went wrong on a loop. The coffee machine overflowed. The dryer chewed a sock. I stepped on a Lego that called itself a spaceship and felt history vibrate through my bones. At work, an entire spreadsheet refused to sum because of one hidden space in a cell that mocked me like a drunk elf. On the way home, a truck cut me off and the River Pass sign glowed at me from the highway like a dare. I pulled into a gas station and did 10 push-ups between pumps like a YouTube dad who has lost the plot. An older woman came out of the convenience store and handed me a bottle of water with the tenderness of a stranger who has seen this movie before. "Whatever it is," she said, "it's smaller than you are." I wanted to hire her as my life coach. Harper broke no contact again once, in a way she didn't see as breaking it. She sent Mark a photo of a dog at the shelter that looked exactly like the emoji dog because she thought he would laugh. He did laugh. He also replied, and she replied to the reply, and 1 hour later she was in the car, keys in hand, on a Tuesday when Lena was making a diorama of a habitat that I failed to understand. She stopped herself in the driveway and came back in crying. "I am not doing this again to him," she said, pointing at our daughter, who was arguing with a pipe cleaner about whether it was a tree. I believed her in a way I hadn't before, not because of the words but because of the U-turn. We sold the couch we bought the year we got married because neither of us wanted to keep sitting on that particular history. A man named Stan showed up with a truck and the arms of a person who trusts carbs. He paid in cash and told us a story about his sister moving in with him. "Life is long," he said, securing the couch with a rope. Not that would have impressed a sailor. Good couches shouldn't have to hold bad memories. I liked him more than some relatives. I replaced the couch with a long, narrow one that does not insist upon itself. Lena tested it by running and collapsing at least 9 times. "It passes," she said solemnly, and I wrote the phrase "it passes" on a sticky note and put it on the underside of the coffee table where only I can see it. Jules convinced me to join him for a pickup basketball game with men our age who still think they can dunk if the wind signs the paperwork. Cannot dunk. I can pass, though, and sweat, and be a human among humans who only know my name and not my toll history. After, we sat in the parking lot drinking Gatorade the color of a cartoon and talking about nothing important for exactly long enough to feel like I had borrowed a different nervous system. The divorce itself, months later, was a Tuesday morning that looked like any other Tuesday if you squinted. The judge asked us questions in a voice that had swept these floors before. We answered like we were reading a manual. There were signatures, stamps, a stack of paper that made my wrist hurt to lift. When it was over, we walked out of the courthouse into a sun that hadn't gotten the memo. And we stood on the steps for an awkward minute until a woman in a pantsuit asked us to move because we were in her photo. We moved. We did not take our own. I celebrated by buying myself a real skillet, the kind that feels like a responsibility and a weapon. I seasoned it like a ritual and made eggs that came out with dignity. Lena said they tasted crispy but friendly. I put the skillet away with 2 hands like it was important because it is. Harper started dating the counselor in the spring. He is good with kids and has the kind of beard that implies patience. Lena likes him because he can juggle apples and because he knows the names of clouds. I liked him because he looked at Harper the way you look at a person you're betting on without needing to own. The first time I saw them together at a school event, my ribs twinged and then relaxed like a muscle that finally got the stretch it needed. When Father's Day rolled in, Harper texted me a photo of Lena in the t-shirt she made at school. The one with my handprint and glitter that refuses to apologize. "She wouldn't let me wash the glitter off the counter," Harper wrote. "Said it's part of the memory." I said that glitter is indeed a memory with edges. Later, Lena handed me a card that said, "You are the best cooker," and I put it on the fridge and dared anyone to correct her grammar. The other guy, Mark, exited the narrative quietly. I heard he moved to a different department in a different building, the corporate version of being sent to a farm upstate. I saw him once in traffic, briefly, the way you recognize a song on the radio and then it's gone. I did not follow. I turned left because the light turned green, and that's what you do when the rules of the road are working. I learned a new hobby by accident. Repairing small things. Not for money. For the feeling. The toilet's chain. The sticky window. The slow drain in the bathroom sink that finally yielded to a zip-it tool and my stubbornness. Every fix felt like a vote for the person I was building. I started keeping a list titled Things I Can Do on my phone for the nights when the list in my head titled Things I Lost got loud. Change a flat in under 9 minutes made the list. Make a decent vinaigrette. Get a grape stain out of a white t-shirt. Say no to a second beer when I'm sad. When the school year ended, Harper asked if I'd be okay with them taking a weekend trip to see her grandmother, who lives in a house full of porcelain birds that never blink. I said yes because I want Lena to collect as many people as she can who will clap when she walks in a room. I spent the weekend painting the hallway a color I chose by standing in the store and asking myself, out loud, which one feels like a place you want to walk through every day? I picked a soft green. I got paint on my elbow and left it there long enough to take a photo because I needed some evidence of myself being a person who does things. On the way to work one morning, my phone buzzed with a RiverPass promotional email again. Something about family plans and faster together. I laughed and then got unexpectedly angry at a noun. I deleted the email and then undeleted it and then put it in the same folder as the toll screenshots because I don't trust my future self to remember the parts I'm tempted to rewrite. My therapist says, honor the version of you who got you here, which sounds like a bumper sticker for a car I want to drive. If you are looking for a moral, I don't have one that isn't suspiciously tidy. I can tell you the details I now know by heart. The bridge speed limit, the diner's hours, the way cheap motel carpets always look like they were designed by someone who hates circles. I can tell you how many steps it is from my front door to the mailbox if I take the long way so I can finish a podcast. I can tell you how many times Lena can listen to the song about the duck who loves lemonade before an adult has to step in 13. But there is one thing that keeps happening that I didn't expect. Joy. It shows up like a kid cutting the line politely. The first time Lena rode her bike without training wheels and I ran behind her with a hand hovering near the seat and then dropped it and she didn't notice for 20 feet. The night Jules and I messed up a stir-fry so badly we invented a new cuisine. Midwestern regret. The afternoon a stranger at the park asked if my daughter could join their kickball game and I yelled, "Yes, please," with the enthusiasm of a man who needed a win he didn't have to manage. Harper and I have learned to ask each other questions like we're neighbors borrowing sugar. Can you take Saturday? Are you okay with piano lessons on Thursdays? Do you have the dinosaur pajamas, or do I? We still step on toes. We still misread tones. We still have days where we have to use the sentence, "Let's try that again." But we do try again. And our kid knows what trying looks like, which feels like the kind of thing a future therapist will call resilience and I will call Tuesday. The bridge is still there. It always will be. It's part of the landscape now, like the water tower and the fennel that grows wild behind the baseball field and the library's summer reading banner that fades in the sun. Sometimes I drive past the exit and my hands get loud on the steering wheel. Sometimes I don't notice it at all. Both feel like progress. I kept Harper's timeline in a sealed envelope for a while, on a shelf next to Lena's baby shoes and a jar of screws I can't throw away because one day they will fit something. Last week, I took the timeline out and put it in the shredder one page at a time because ritual is allowed to be literal. I did not feel lighter. I felt the exact weight of the paper and the hum of the machine and the knowledge that I am no longer interested in rereading the worst chapter to prove to myself I remember it. On the night I shredded, Riverpass sent another email. This one said, "We're with you for the long haul." I laughed out loud and whispered, "Not anymore," like a weirdo in his kitchen. Then I turned off the lights, checked on Lena, and went to sleep on a bed with a headboard I still haven't sanded the crayon off of. Because some souvenirs are evidence that a child lived here and loved hard. Months later, on a wet Wednesday, I found myself stopped on the bridge because of construction. The rain made the river look like static. I looked at the toll gantry and felt nothing except the desire to be home in time to help with spelling. The light turned green. We moved. I did not take a photo. I did not commemorate the moment. I simply drove. There is no brave ending here, just a steady one. I am a man who knows the names of his daughter's friends and the location of the extra toilet paper. I am a man who can make 4 breakfasts from one pan and a willingness to improvise. I am a man who keeps a list called Things I Can Do, and I add to it when I remember that I am not a story that happened to me, but a person who keeps moving. If a toll ever pings my phone again in the middle of the night, I know exactly what I'll do. Breathe, check on my kid, and then decide what matters most in a life I didn't choose but am choosing every day to live well.